Great. So Liz, we're going to get started. I'm so glad you can join us today and help have kind of develop the conversation. So first off, I appreciate that we also had Bob Patterson hopefully leading the session as well today. So I'm replacing Bob. So appreciate that I'm going to be asking you lots of questions about the US and about the US market that you're the expert on. And appreciate some of my contacts have come from being HR side of the world, but on the European side of a large organization. So lots to learn here. So I'm super excited. So first off, for those of us that are in the waiting room as well as in the listening to this today. So my background is fitness physiology. Name is Grace McNamara. I am CEO of a company called XE. So we're exercise intelligence, and we're the first medical device software for exercise for chronic conditions. We'll share more about that in a moment. But Liz, can you please introduce yourself as you're literally the expert I'm looking forward to talking today?
Building me up here, Grace. My name is Liz Woodhouse, and Grace, thank you so much for inviting me here today. I have a little over 25 years of experience in the people function. I've had incredible experiences at top companies such as Sam Adams and MSL Group. And increasingly, what I've found is that people leaders are being asked to really think more broadly and more deeply about what employees need at work. And it's no longer just about your paycheck and your benefits, it's more about the whole person. And so I was really excited to bring XE to some more folks here today and to talk about it. And also, one of the things I found is that healthcare costs are skyrocketing, as we all know, and we feel it. And as HR leaders and people leaders, we really depend on our brokers to do the best for us without a lot of oversight, right? So that's also what I'm really excited about with XE and how you are able to hold these big, insurers accountable. So I am delighted to be here today with you, and I'm delighted to talk all things fitness and health as well as benefits.
Thank you, Liz, so much. As you said, it's so right. There's so much expectation on people leaders and businesses and organizations, and it's only growing and growing and growing. So yeah, I mean, I think when I was on the HR side, one of my frustrations was a lot of our solutions were really nice for if you were engaged in health, but it was so much harder to reach populations who have multiple chronic conditions, may or may not be leveraging their benefits portals, may or may not be, engaged in all of the positive activities that typically a people team will put on. So yeah, so hence some of the work that we're doing, I'm really excited. I think it helps to close some of the gap and to bring more people into, supportive and positive change. So let me step back a little bit and share a little bit about what XE is. So let me just pull up 2 slides to kind of share the story for the population that are listening today. Because I think this is quite unique, and that's where I think, as you said, we're talking about rethinking some of the benefits and rethinking how they're leveraged and used today, because there's some great benefits there. So first up, XE I mentioned is short for exercise intelligence. It is about exercise. It's about intelligently using the science we've had for decades, but in a very, very personalized and safe way here. So this is a really important factor. We talk about exercise as medicine as a term. It's been around for a long time. The American College of Sports Medicine coined that a long time ago. And it's true. There's lots of evidence around that as well. What's really unique and important, Liz, and I was very, very important, this is very intentional, that we were, credible and giving you as a people leader and other people leaders the confidence that this is not just another, platform, it's another solution, especially around exercise, because plenty hasn't worked before, often because they haven't been tailored and designed and safe and really directed to the population who need the most support. So, FDA, class 1, CE and UKCA. So we're very intentional in making sure that we're regulated as a healthcare solution, because at the end of the day, we want to get to healthcare improvements, which leads to, working with the likes of insurers and people, leaders and teams to prove the value and the return on bringing these solutions to play. So for those that are listening, very simple up front first is what we do is we look at, first of all, if a person should be and can be safely active, so medical clearance to very first off. Then we figure out what's their activity status today. Is somebody sedentary? Are they somewhat active? Are they moderately active, highly active? We look at rest and heart rate, we look at beta blockers and some other metrics. And then we look at their conditions in particular as well. So are they diagnosed with multiple chronic conditions? And as we know, a large population have at least one medical condition diagnosed, or at least they have risk factors, especially if they're sedentary. That itself leads to risk factors. And then to explain what we do is, so we take in all the science around these, which is decades of science. Thankfully, there's no lack of science on this bit. And we try to bring it into a very simple program for people to understand. And well, what do I do? So you'll see here on the screen, for example, the simplest home screen here is we talk about, let's get you active. Here's the right number of minutes, the right number of days, and the right heart rate intensity safe for you. Lots and lots of science behind that, but very action, simple orientated. It links to wearables so we can validate that heart rate that you're in. So again, you stay in that safe zone and make sure we're getting people to understand what it's like to be healthy. We also have strength training here, super important. And Liz, I'm getting into the area of my life as well around menopause and how we're thinking about, you know, the knock-on effects with it. But ultimately, every single person, male and female, starts to decrease their strength from the age in their 30s. So, you know, the vast majority of the workplace. So strength is thankfully becoming much more acceptable and understood, and the importance around that. So likewise, we're making sure that we're helping people to understand, well, what does that mean? Like, what do I need to do? How many exercises? What are the exercises, and so on. So to help people to understand then what to do, so then they know the number of minutes and the heart rate intensity and the number of days. There's content within the application as well to literally help people to walk through it at home. Most of our users in particular are not gym goers. They're not someone who's looking to join a gym, but they are looking to be more active for health. So at home, in the park, using what they have around them is more accessible and hopefully much more enjoyable and sustainable as well. So there is content people can pop onto their screen, whether it's their laptop, their TV, or their phone, whatever, to follow through what is strength training, what is heart health, what is flexibility, how do I improve my balance, how do I stretch, how do I warm up. So again, bring people that kind of to their home. And thankfully, there's lots of great content around that. I mentioned that it links to wearables. So validation here is really important, but behavior change and reward is super, super important. I think we've had too many programs over the years that have been that stick. You know, we're telling somebody to be more active. We're telling them, you know, you have to be active. It hasn't worked. We need to stop telling people what to do and help them to understand why and the values they're going to get from it. So, you know, very intentional around saying, well done, you know, everything counts here. Every step, every movement, every activity is a positive step in the right direction. So let's keep this super, super positive. And then especially for the, you know, the HR people leaders as well, is bringing all that data back into a dashboard. So you can look at the population level. Are people being more active? And then what's changing? What's changing on weight, on BMI, on blood pressures, on joint stiffness, on blood sugars, on mood. So looking at the real data, because that's the one that's going to help you calculate whether there's a savings. And if we look at the data from industry, it indicates if we can get, like, this is a powerful number, if we can get people that are sedentary to be moderately active, which is exactly what we do, give or take, there's nearly a $4,000 saving per person per year. And that's obviously clocks up, you know, pretty significantly. And that's not even including, you know, the big surgeries and the big ticket items around medications and so on, which wouldn't be, you know, for everyone. So huge opportunity and potential. And then just to touch on, Liz, what you talked about as well as the numbers. The numbers are really, you know, really high and increasing and continuing to go in the wrong direction. So people leaders, as you said, are under pressure, right? And financial CFOs are under pressure to look at how do we contain the cost to somewhat, right? And how do we help to hopefully turn the tide as well? So numbers are crazy. 70% of healthcare costs typically are on conditions that are largely led by inactivity. Over 60% of the populations, this is a global number, I think it's a bit higher in the US, but usually for employers, you're probably looking at 60% population not meeting activity guidelines. And then 50% of people have more than one condition. So huge numbers. Everything's kind of going in the wrong direction, but we do know that, you know, inactivity is changeable. Inactivity costs are reversible, and then long-term chronic conditions also are predictable. You know, so we're looking at the data and how do we bring the data to life for people leaders so we can help to show, and ideally show with lifestyle here, that between exercise, nutrition, and behaviors, when done in a very action, personalized, safe way, people do engage, and hence you see the realization of that, you know, that savings that is possible. And that's a really important piece to it. Liz, that's all I wanted to share. I wanted to get your thoughts on, you know, you've kind of mentioned this already, but these trends, and you're under pressure. Every people leader is under pressure. Every business is under pressure now. You know, these are trends and the numbers that you would have seen, and likewise we've been challenged with over the years as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'd like to highlight here is the fact that you do have the FDA approval. That was probably something that was not easy and probably took a long period of time. What I see in my role is a lot of emails about, hey, we want to focus on the mental health. Hey, we want to put some sort of exercise thing in your organization. With XE, I feel like you have that personalization. And not to say it this way, but that one-stop shop, if you will. But what I also really love about it is you are targeting a population that is sedentary, that with just a few different changes and tweaks here and there, they're able to really drive down cost, really drive up their health. A lot of folks who are highly sedentary, and this is, I'm not a doctor by any stretch, but in my work, they don't want to go to the gyms. They don't want to have an exercise regime that is for someone who's 20 years younger and fit. So I think that having it personalized to them on their phones, where no one else is looking, where they can do something at home, where they feel safe and comfortable, is a real big win.
It's really important when you mentioned that. I completely agree. And I know we haven't published the data yet, but I'll share a little snippet of what's to come. When we look at the inactivity and the changes of people who are the least active, which is a large population, we're seeing over 1900% increase, up to a 12-month period. So it just shows if we do provide a solution that is designed and targeted to people who need the most support, we keep it simple. And to your point, I think safety, FDA does give a level of, comfort to people that I know what I can do when I know I can do this at home.
Absolutely.
So really, really works. I'm delighted to bring this to life for hopefully millions and millions of people who need it.
Mhm. So I think one of the questions that people may have is, how does it all come together, right? What are the things that you get from an employer or from a healthcare provider, insurer? And also, how do you keep all of that information private, right? Because of HIPAA laws here. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super important, HIPAA, right, and the confidentiality, because the reality is all of us have a little bit of conservative about sharing the data with our employers. We kind of going, I want to get healthy and fit, but I don't want it to affect my employment status or my chance of
Right.
promotion and so on. And there's a concern with that. So yes, what we do is when we collect the data from each individual person with consent, obviously, it goes into a data portal, but HR and people leaders will only see the aggregate data. So over a certain threshold of employees, aggregate data. So we will work with each individual to make sure that they're understanding them and helping themselves to be more active and understanding the data and their health improvements. And we'll share with them their individual health improvements, but HR and benefits will see the aggregate data. And what we want to do then, Liz, with the likes of insurers and in the likes is, again, going back to how do we help to show and prove that this is helping to manage costs and risk, right? So again, going back to, and the people leader, like, well, surely if our population is getting healthier, we can at least tackle some of the increasing risk profile of the population, the organization. So the data is really key. And that's why I think it's super important that we're doing this in a validated way. So we're looking at real data, objective data that's tracking and trending health improvements, adherence, and the likes of, your HbA1cs, if there's pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, not only weight for weight obesity, but your cardiovascular risks and so on. So there is lots of data out there, but right now it does feel like it's a little bit disjointed for people, especially if they have more than one care team. And as you said, not shared with the employer, right? So we have to join those dots together, and hence working with each individual, but yet it's provided through the employer, but yet we work with each individual on the end is quite important. And going back to
Yeah.
the point of how it's leveraged, Liz, what I found over the years is, fitness reimbursement, lifestyle reimbursements, and obviously FSA, HSA are very relevant here in the US. Not everyone understands what they're for, and I'd love to just get you to kind of explain them for a moment. And likewise, how do we rethink them a little bit in relation to what we're talking about here, accessing, the right science for each individual person. So yes, it's one solution, but it's not a one size fits all because of that, automated and personalization with it. But give us some context around those benefits, because I do believe that the perception and reality are a little bit different. And we have a lot of help and education to bring people.
Right. And it goes back to helping to educate people, whether it be financial education or my kids are going to college education. This all ties into the health and wellness of the employee and giving them more information. So, a lot of folks are confused. Benefits is a scary thing. They do, I know myself, it's complicated. We don't want to think about it unless we really need it. There are some folks like myself who weirdly really like that part of the job, but for most people, they don't want to think about it until they need to think about it. So for a flexible spending account, that's a use it or lose it situation. Folks use it for medical, they can use it for eyeglasses and for dental, as well as some over-the-counter things at a CVS or Walgreens. But it's not a savings account like an HSA is, which is a piggy bank for you as you grow older, where it will be portable. You can take it wherever that you go, every company, and you can use that as a triple tax savings, where you can even use that as an investment vehicle to some degree. And especially with all of the costs going up, everything costs more. Thinking about when I'm 65 years old, not many people do, but how am I going to pay for my medical expenses once I hit that age and further? So, um, again, I love this because it's tied into holding accountable the insurers, and we can talk a little bit about that, but also helping to educate folks on what benefits they do have at certain companies. So, Grace, you would come into a company and say, "We understand that you have these benefits. Here's how it all ties together. Here's how you could potentially pay for some of this if needed, if the company can't support that in some way, shape, or form." So, and then there's HRAs. Everything sounds alike, health reimbursement accounts that a company can put monies into. So you have three different vehicles. Not all are available to you depending upon the plan that you pick. And they all sound alike. So it does make it a bit more complicated. I don't know if I've answered your question, Grace, but I do love the fact that we're educating and we have to continue to educate. So maybe you can even talk about that as well as how EXI reaches out and continues to educate participants.
Yeah, you're right. The FSA, HSA, HRA space reimbursements, lots of options in there, and like these are great benefits. And that my experience would be that not everyone uses them, right? Probably for two reasons. One is they may not know what they're really eligible for and what they can claim it against. And I know there's been some interesting work recently around exercise and IRS and compliance with HRAs and FSAs and so on. And that's, going back to our point about being FDA and being regulated, being designed for conditions, literally, designing for conditions, and then making sure that we're treating that condition with evidence of proof that we're helping to reverse, manage, or prevent that condition. So like the data is really, really important there. The perception, I think, which I would have been exposed to around that fitness reimbursement, fantastic benefit. Often perception is that it's for a gym. And as you said, a lot of people don't want to join a gym for different reasons. It could be access and location. It could just be the environment. It could just be that they're not into exercising indoors. And thankfully, when the sun comes out, the summer is upon us. And we can exercise anywhere and hopefully outside and safely as well. So absolutely, it's the perception of it being a gym reimbursement versus a fitness reimbursement. I think there's a bit of rethinking and re-looking at the words that are describing that benefit there. Because one of the
And
things
it's
I was
something
looking at.
forgotten. It's forgotten about. So when I was at other companies, we would have $150 for a gym reimbursement or a fitness reimbursement, but it didn't tie into the HSA or FSA or the HRA, right? So I think that we need to, um, tie those together for a better education. Um, and just as I was speaking about it, I forgot about it, right? So that was one of the things I said. A lot of folks don't think about it. And then it's the end of the year. And oh, goodness, like, can I get that $150? As opposed to, wow, this is going to help me in the long term.
Yeah, yeah. And I think they've been around so long, as you said, even people leaders are like, it's a default benefit, right? Everyone has it, we have it available for years. it's just another benefit that's available and may or may not be thought about too often. Which brings us back to today. I mean, I think it's a really good benefit to rethink. What's the wording? What's being funded? What's the ROI? Like, is there an ROI on its existing benefit, which seems to be, and again, I get your thoughts here, is there calculation of ROI on the fitness reimbursement benefit or the FSA benefits?
No, truly, we just decide, we look to see who asked for it year over year, and it's an expense line. There's no, there's really no, oh, this has actually affected our insurance premiums. And I think, Grace, that's a big, big win with XE. And I think that we should dive into that if you're ready to, on how this data can then be used to hold accountable our insurers. So I don't know how many people leaders are on the call, but I would bet that if anyone is negotiating benefits, we have wonderful brokers who are savants who can do this with us. However, we don't really have a lot of levers that we can pull to say, actually, I know my population's very healthy. I know they're running at 80% and not the 150% you're saying. And so pulling that together. So you're getting the data from the people. Then what happens? I think that's important for folks to know, Grace.
Yeah, and I'd love to be able to bring it on the insurer in here. We want to be able to look at literally the risk profiling data and the medical claims data. Appreciate there's always a lag. Yeah, right. There's always a lag between the medical claims from 2023, for example, being available, it's going to be mid 2024 before that data is available. But we really want to be looking at, if we prove a 5%, say weight loss across the population, be that whatever that population size is, what does that mean on the medical, the risk profile as well as the medical claims? And over time, this is what I want to be able to do here with employers and with insurers, is track and trend that with changes of healthcare, risk is changing, hence medical claims are changing. And ideally said, stem the tide of the increasing, percentage year on year.
5% year over year, 25% is what I hear. That's the starting point for a lot of insurers.
And that's Liz, I don't know how you think about that when how do you argue against 25% when you don't have the data to argue against?
So, there is a threshold in, number of employees and lives. So you have to be 100 or more to actually be able to access the detail of the data. Again, for all of our participants, we never see in the people field names, identification, but we see, we have 5 people who one person has cancer, another person needs hormones, that type of thing. So, we really don't have a lot of insights, and we really use the support of our brokers to help us with that. And they've been working with these folks and these insurers for years and years and years, so they know. But this gives us a level of accessibility, and then also holding them accountable, which I think the time is now for that, right? So our employees know that we are truly championing their cause and their health by giving them this opportunity with an XE, right? And then also holding accountable the insurers so that we don't have continuous 25% increases year over year. A lot of employees just think that that's the way it goes.
Right.
And I just don't think that that's right.
It's not sustainable. I mean, as any business, I mean, and we're in tough markets. Like the last couple of years have been challenging for pretty much every business in every market, with no exception. 25% year on year increase in costs on healthcare. Like I struggle to see how certain businesses are continuing to afford that. And I'm assuming that some businesses are not continuing to afford that, where they're just saying, we can't afford to be covering for our employees 100% of healthcare costs. Is that what's happening?
So absolutely, you'll see a decrease in percentage of what the company is going to take on for the employee. You're going to see a decrease in continuation of benefits. So for example, if I were given a 25% increase from XYZ, I would say to my broker, that's not good enough. And so we would go out and we would bid it. It's all part of that process. But that incurs uncertainty, that incurs employees having to go back and get pre-approved. pre-approvals, pre-authorizations, having to look for new doctors. So it's a complete disruptor as it relates to their care. So as a people leader, I don't want to change too much because people have changed, they're every day, they're fatigued. So to have to go back and do all of that to get better costs, it's hard for the employees. So we would rather stay with our current, insurer because all of those things have already happened and it's a continuation of care. And in many cases, we can't because we can't afford.
So stability is important, and I would absolutely agree there. There's lots of, especially if you're receiving treatment for a condition, there's enough complexity and worry and stress with that, bar worrying about, and as we know, it's costly, bar worrying about who's going to pay for it and do we need to renegotiate. So no, I hope that lots of employees would appreciate, people, leaders and teams trying to make sure that they're not creating that change unless it's absolutely necessary. So
Enough. If you have 3 different types of cancer, you don't want to have to go back and take care of each one and have to go back with all the paperwork. It's awful. So that's, I think, a hope that I would have for you at Exie is that you're able to hold them accountable, the insurers, have great conversations. And again, they're not the bad guys, right? They are
no.
also trying to do the right thing, but hold them accountable, work together in more of a clear manner, and try to get that stability for that people that employee.
And that's the thing about the collaboration here. It's a win-win-win scenario, right? If people are healthy, there's no downside, right? It saves on the cost of
For
healthcare,
them
right?
as well.
It saves for definitely for their risk profile. It helps them to manage their costs better and support their people better. It definitely retains contracts because you're going to be happy as the employer. You're staying with contract, and employees are staying with the employer as well because they're also happy to continue,
Right.
getting the support that they need. So the beauty of exercise and lifestyle, I'm going to say lifestyle here because it's definitely, an area that's been pushed. And again, the stick and the carrot. The stick hasn't worked ever. Whereas when we do something in a very personalized way that's supportive of the change and journey people are on, it is a win-win-win scenario. And this is where I think the opportunity with insurers is bringing something that's new to the market, even though it's not a new concept, right? Not a new concept. Excessive medicine, completely understandable. Fitness reimbursement, also not new, but there's a tweak to be had there in relation to it being appreciative of a clinical, solution that's at home, it's app-based, it's digitally, it's validated through wearables. There's a bit of tweaking there, I think, around the wording to make sure people understand that it's relevant. This is the first time, FSA, HSA could be used because, again, it's been designing for a condition, to treat a condition and to prove that condition is being maintained or reversed, ideally. I'd love to come back here, Liz, in 12 months, 24 months time and talk about the number of people who've reversed their type 2 diabetes, or prevented the
Yeah,
surgery.
A1C goes down. Absolutely. One of the things we forgot to talk about too is when we talk about partnering with our insurers, for the folks on the line, there are insurers that have a set aside funds that you can use for anything. So it's not just on the employer's end. There are insurers out there, and our most recent one, that will give you a certain amount of dollars towards whatever it is that you want to use it for. And that's why we brought in Exie because that was a win-win for us as well.
Do you think employers know that fund exists?
No.
No. And it is, I said, it's a pot of money that the insurers are providing to employers in order to help support initiatives and health
And
and
I don't know
well-being.
if it's for every insurer, I know, but I've seen it a few times with a few different insurers. It's always something to ask about. Is there money set aside for wellness, for fitness, for whatever it is for our employees? And you might be surprised that there is.
Yeah. And I can definitely, to your point, as a few insurers that I would have worked in all have funding available because they want people to be healthier, and lifestyle interventions are much, much cheaper than a lot of solutions that are out there as well. So it's a win-win-win scenario. Liz, if you look at, the insurer and the conversations insurers and employers are having, around this time of the year, and you might just give us a bit of context between now and open enrollment and January timeframe. Walk us through a little bit of the mechanics, if you don't mind. And likewise, where does fitness reimbursement, FSA, HSA, and these programs fall into that kind of time period?
Mhm. So some companies will have a July 1st, and some companies will do January. So if your company is doing a July 1st open enrollment, then you would be starting right now. You'd probably be late if you were starting your process. So in January, you start your process. Depending upon how many lives you have, will depend on what information you're given. And then our brokers would work with the insurers to say, okay, what are we running at? How are we looking? Are there a few outlier employees that are really using the system as it should be used? And what are we looking at year over year for an increase? Because it's always an increase, unfortunately. So, like I said previously, Grace, if that comes back in a double digit, they go back, they look at a few more things. Some of those folks might have exited the company. So there's a lot of different things that can happen. And that usually happens behind closed doors, right? So the HR, the people leader isn't involved in all of those conversations. That's the broker and the insurer. To have this in the middle is really helpful for people leaders because we can say, wow, it looks like we're running really well. We don't have any outliers. Not really sure where you're coming up with that. So that can insert us into more of a leadership position. So same thing goes for folks who have open enrollment in December for January. You would start probably in September. The process is long, especially if you bid out to several different, and some providers would just say, look, we can't bid on we can't bid. So some insurers will say no, more often than not. So especially if they're not national or they know that they can't provide additional services. The HSA and FSA truly is sort of like we don't think about that at like all I think about is medical because the medical drives that cost. The dental, the vision, those are add-ons, those are wonderful, but those programs don't really drive the cost. It's the medical. So even from talking with you, Grace, it's like, wow, I'm going to be putting my thinking cap on in a different way as how we can utilize those funds. Maybe the HRA that a company sponsors, the company would put some money into that. So unfortunately, in recent past, it's been an afterthought, if you will, because the medical is really where the brain power goes.
Yeah. And understandable considering it's 25% year on year increase. So completely understandable there. I'm just going to welcome anybody who wants to pop in a question into the chat. Feel free, and we'll happily pick that up. While we're waiting for those questions, Liz, if we look at XE coming into an organization, what are the challenges or barriers that you guys face when it's a new, and I appreciate often there's point solutions and there's new solutions to the market. So what are the challenges and what are the conversations that you'd be having as a people leader that we can make your lives easier? So how should a solution like XE come to you to make your life easy to go, yes, this makes sense, and we can see how it will benefit our employees as well as our bottom line?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question, Grace. So I think it's the definition of the difference that you offer. An FDA approved process, an all in one encompassing for the employee, right? Health, wellness, that kind of thing. Um, that's a differentiator because just like you, as a CEO of a company, and everyone else on this line, we get calls every day, all day long from people trying to sell us something, right? So, this is a long term partnership and it is a partnership that will have long-term effects on the bottom line for your companies. And as people leaders, we are also being tasked to think about ways that we can save our companies money, right? And because we don't bring in the business, we're not the chief growth officers, we're in a different role. So having the ability to say, look, those numbers are powerful, Grace, right? If we had employees who were sedentary and they did just a little bit every day. That's close to $4,000 per person per year. And that translates to lots of dollars for the bottom line, where you are able to then use those dollars for something else. So really, it's utilizing that slush fund from the insurer, and then also setting aside some dollars for an XE to, be rolled out into the company. And to get the wearables, I think that was one thing that you also offered is wearables for the entire family. So that's something as well. You're not just focused on my employees, you're focused on the entire family, which I think is huge because how great would that be? We're all going to go out for an afternoon walk after dinner, everybody and the dog. So I think that's really important. So just differentiating yourself, having that FDA approval is huge in my eyes. And then also being able to utilize the levers like the insurer's money, as well as putting monies aside in the budget. So it's really hard, Grace, because everybody has different fiscal years and different budgeting times. I know
Right.
for my previous companies, it was October we were doing budgets. So I think it's really just having those networks and also showing your value, which there's a lot.
Excellent. You mentioned a few different pathways there and timings throughout the year as well. So, and the good news I think of exercise is it's year long, and the good news of software it's year long. So yeah, we've got a lot of flexibility to work within whatever time periods work for an organization for the people leader team. And I'd love to see more people leaders as well. Try that XC for themselves as well, because I appreciate and people leaders are also people, right? They're also employees, and people teams often are the ones like at certain times of the year, especially,
Yes.
are very stretched, and likewise are this having the same challenges as every other employee. So we're all in this together. The joys of being real people in the real world. So a few different options there. So one is you potentially have a funding through insurers. Right. You potentially have mechanics through your fitness reimbursement benefit. You have your HSA benefit, your FSA benefits. So there's loads of different options there, or it could be bundled into a medical cost avoidance program, particular budget there as well. So there's a few different options. One of the things, Liz, I know people leaders, and obviously we mentioned that like the time of the year, it's busy, right? There's a lot of busyness going on. There's a lot of work, and this is not to mention the usual benefits and the usual operations of people's scenarios and increasing teams and decreasing teams and changing people and performance reviews and everything like that. How we need to make it very simple for you guys, right? We need to make it super simple. And that's one of the beauties here is a program that is, even though it's targeted to a certain population, we like to invite everybody. So keeping it super simple, it's like invite anybody. And as you said, it's not to do with just the employees. It could be their partner. It could be, their adult kids and so on. So we cater for everyone above 18 years of age. But thankfully at home in an environment, what we see is if somebody, mom or dad are getting more active, the kids are more active as well. So it's a naturally, knock-on effect with it. So very simply, what we do to help kind of make sure we manage it efficiently for you guys is it's ultimately a CSV file, right? You tell us who you want us to invite, and from there on, we take care of the invitations, making sure everyone's able to onboard with any issues with, having the right phone or the wearable or whatever, and likewise that engagement. So we have a lot of communications as well of what is exercise, and it's phenomenal in one way because I think we take it for granted sometimes, people understanding like that's a very scary word. So first of all, we try not to use it. But what is it? Is it normal that I'm out of breath? Is it normal that my legs are sore after a workout? Is it normal that my heart rate is increasing? So we get some really fundamental, questions. And thankfully we're well positioned to be able to answer all of those, questions, as well as help people to understand, the journey that they're going to go on. So there's communications on a daily basis for the first 2 weeks, and then weekly after that as well. So bring people on that journey. And it's definitely, a powerful, like the stories are just so powerful when somebody does have a significant change in their health. It affects everything else in their lifestyle. And one thing just to note, Liz, as well, because I appreciate when you're looking at different benefits, lifestyle is multiple factors to lifestyle, right? And we see that if somebody, and there's good evidence around this as well from another insurer in the industry, around if somebody is managing and active around one lifestyle, they're typically more conscious of other lifestyle factors. So food, good example, food is hard, right? Food tracking and logging is ridiculously hard. It's typically not sustainable. We don't have good technologies to automate what are you putting into your body and how it's affecting your body. We just don't have good solutions to do that in a seamless way right now. But thankfully, when you look at the end metrics around blood pressures, around resting heart rates, around weight circumference, you can get a sense of either way it's working. Some of it's not trackable, like we're not getting people to log their foods. We're kind of saying, don't worry about it. Hopefully you're being more conscious. End of the day, health changes are the numbers on the scales, as well as on the blood tests and so on. So it's a powerful piece there. What's interesting is when you look at the data that you get on health of populations today, as you said, this is a phenomenally different approach to having access to data, confidentially, obviously, from not individual data, but aggregated data, to help you really look at what are you going to be investing in, and likewise the ROI on some of the benefits that have been available for so long without having any calculation of, are they effective? Are they reaching the right people? Are they having an impact on their lives? So the stories, there's a stories there that are missing.
That's what I want to say, Grace. I think that that's another way for our people leaders is to think about the stories. The stories are I believe, are what is going to get folks to be interested. So yes, it's the ROI. Yes, it's the data. Yes, it's the simplicity. And also some folks can't afford the wearables, right?
Yeah.
We have very different populations at different companies. So the fact that there is a potential for a wearable, folks might be overjoyed with that because they can't afford that personally. So I think that would be one more way, Grace, that I would suggest for
Yeah.
our people leaders. And I don't know if the audience has other thoughts, but I think the stories are the real kicker because that goes straight here to the heart.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, right? When you have a reason to celebrate and to talk about your journey, they're powerful because we all know that we have an emotional story. We see somebody having a phenomenal change in their life. It has an impact on us, on all of us. You couldn't but not be delighted for that person and also inspired by that person. And this is one of the journeys that we're definitely on, as well as gathering those stories. And hopefully people are comfortable to share those stories so that they do inspire more people, appreciate the sensitivities, and not everyone wants to share what journey they're on and what changes they've made, but they're absolutely powerful. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to bringing
I'd
more
love
and
to
more of
hear
these.
one story of you, Grace. So I'm going to put you on the spot because that's what I do. Tell us what got you focused on this. What's obviously you have a high passion for it. Maybe you can share your story a little bit.
Yeah, I can. And I'm very passionate. You're right. I'm very passionate about this. So it goes back to, it's an Irish, as you know, I'm an Irish background. And the beauty of Ireland is we're good at storytelling, but we're always good at telling the real story around, our personal story. We kind of have good fables and good stories that are based upon somebody else. So I grew up, I suppose, ultimately in a space that was, and I'm thankfully, designed to move. For those that don't know, I'm a tall, athletic, well able to move and have no limitations. And I would have been a very high achiever at sports when I was younger as well. But I was surrounded by an environment of people who had alcoholism and depression in particular. And I found it vastly impactful of when people who had depression ended up getting active, they were genuinely able to change not only their environment, but also their outlook and ultimately change some of their diagnosis. So that to me was what was the most powerful story in my circle when I was younger. And I was like, this is where the power lies. We can not only really change somebody's lives, but actually do it in a way that we can do it for mass populations. And the ripple effect is huge. So, that's one of my first earlier moments of I want to be involved in exercise and sports, because I was looking at trainers. I joined my first gym as an admin for a desk when I was 15. And I was looking at trainers doing phenomenal work with people across all ages, across all diagnosis. And it's like the stories, as you said, the stories were just powerful. So that was where I was like, I want to be involved in this. This is where it's important to me. Lots of my teammates, for example, that went into the same sporting environment, went off in that elite sports angle. And I was like, no, I'm good for the elite sports. I think there's more people who need more help than, elite sports athletes. It's great, don't get me wrong, a big follower. But we definitely have the opportunity, and we've always had the opportunity, Liz. And I think that was, again, we're like yourself, it's not shared too many numbers, but over 25 years ago, it was an element of this is inspiring. And even when I did my degrees in fitness and physiology, my first master's in epidemiology, and I did my thesis on depression in actually population of people with type 2 diabetes. And I was trying to link the dots between depression and amputation to really go is, do we have enough science and evidence to look at depression is big enough and strong enough as a indicate as a condition itself to actually cause an amputation? And it wasn't significant enough research, but there was a good trend there. And not just typically we look at, like, say, type 2 diabetes causing depression. I was on looking at the other way around, going ignoring the type 2 diabetes, control for that, but actually depression itself. And an amputation is a phenomenally, life-changing event. So
And
yeah, that's
type
what
2 diabetes, if you have that, if your mother or father has that, then you're way more likely to have that. And that's my story. My mother had type 2, passed away at an early age. So I make sure my A1C is really good. And whether or not I'm an athlete, which I'm really not, at least I move my body and try to eat well. So that's a important piece, Grace. Thank you for sharing that.
And it's super, I mean, this is the beauty, Liz, is I think every single person I talk to has a story how health impacts their life, or a person in their, family or their significant others has been so powerfully affected by a condition. This is life, and we talk about the numbers around cancer. Thankfully, the treatments are getting much better. Cardiovascular disease risks, we're getting earlier diagnosis and acknowledgement of those numbers, and that's getting better. So we're on, I think, a phenomenal change in healthcare. And this is why I'm so excited to bring XC not only to healthcare, but to, employers, so we can get this to the populations at home, right? Don't worry about having to engage in a hospital or a health plan or whatever, but let's help you do what you can do at home in,
First
again,
step.
safe
Yep.
and personalized clinical way that leads to people on a great journey to see those, to hear more of those powerful stories. So yeah, I don't share that story too often, Liz. So fair play to you. You're good
I'll
at
put you on the
finding
spot, Grace.
stories.
That's what I'm good at there.
This
So
is the
thank
people
you.
leader. The power of the people leader to find that one nugget. You had the story. You had
A
the
little nugget, but thank you for sharing
No, it's
and being a good
fantastic.
sport.
Conscious that we haven't got questions in the chat, which is perfect. I think hopefully we've answered everything. Liz, this has been super powerful. I think I'm so glad that you're able to share your expertise for me. Any takeaway messages you'd like to leave for the audience who are listening or will listen in the next couple of days or weeks around, again, thinking about their benefits, their time of the year, their employees, health, lifestyle. What's the landing takeaway message for you?
Yeah. I think the landing message is to think about something like an XC, think about being creative. There's a lot of different levers that you could pull. Ask your broker, ask your insurer about any type of slush fund that you can use. There's things there that we don't even know, right? And as you mentioned, we're so busy every day with performance reviews and raises and all of these other things. And you also can use your network. So if you know one of us, Grace or myself, you're always welcome to reach out. We're tied together in LinkedIn, and think about the stories about how you can bring your leadership, your CFO, use some of the numbers that Grace shared, so that you can persuade your teams to take this on and see the benefits down the line. Again, it's not going to be immediate, but it will be a long sustaining piece. So I would say take that first step as a people leader, take that first step as an employee to your health. And I'm just so grateful, Grace, that we had a chance to talk about this. I am going to go out after this and take a little walk because I've been sitting for the past hour, and I'll have you in my mind, and really enjoyed our time today. Thank you.
No, I'm delighted. Thank you so much. And a pleasure. Likewise, for anyone listening, delighted to connect with anybody. We really want to help millions and millions of people to be more active and to enjoy life, much better. So we're really excited to do that. And as you said, there's so many mechanics and levers to pull. So we're happy to, be flexible and work with people to find the right one for the right organization. So delighted to be able to do that. And thank you everyone for listening on the chat as well. It's been great. Liz, I'm going to let you go. I know you're busy, and enjoy the walk. It is a lovely day. It looks like from behind you as well. So I'm with you. I'm going to head out and get some fresh air for a few minutes, and we will live the way we talk.
That's right. All right, Grace. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.